Aloha, y'all. Welcome to the Esports Futuri E-Zine Podcast, where we chat it up with your favorite celebrities, influencers, local heroes, and people of all walks of life as we reveal the unexpected connection they have to the gaming industry. I'm your host, Chauntel Busche. Well, hello, and aloha, y'all. Miss Chauntel Busche here, Managing Director of Esports Futuri. I am so excited today because we just have some amazing guests today. First, I'd like to introduce my lovely co-host, but I guess that would be for a trick. My handsome co-host, Mr. Donte Jackson. He's going to be joining me every couple weeks, and so I'm so excited to have you, brother. Thanks for hopping on here.
Always, yeah.
Yeah, and I've also got our two guests, Mr. Simon Bennett and Mr. Markel Lee. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Thank you.
Now, these guys, they have a company called AoE Creative, and we're going to dive deep into that in just a second here. But I've had such an amazing opportunity to be able to kind of do a little hangout session with these fellas and learn more about themselves and their lives and what they do for the industry. Let me pick on you first, Simon, if you don't mind. I want to know, can you tell us just briefly about your partnership that you have with us with Map Esports and Esports Futuri and the role that you guys play? Also a little bit about your company, obviously.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, as you said, we AoE Creative. We're about just over 2 years old now. We've both been in the industry for a real long time. Myself, about 17 years. Worked through a number of companies on the way, but Blizzard is probably one of the ones everyone knows the most. So Activision Blizzard. Also worked for Razer, Faceit, Wargaming.net, a bunch of other places.
I may have heard a couple of those before.
Some of those. Had the pleasure of working with some awesome people and some awesome brands along the way. And then, we started AoE. We're a creative design marketing agency specializing in what we call gaming and nerd culture. So anything from esports all the way through to like comic books, Dungeons and Dragons, etc. Board games. We do anything and everything that is nerdy. We tend to mostly focus on gaming. That's the area we have, I'd say, the most clients. And then, we met up with you guys at MAP fairly recently. We've been talking a little bit over and off and on for a good while. But we've sort of come on to be an esports North Star or something like that. Like help to sort of like ground everything in the industry and make sure that all your amazing ideas work both for a non-endemic audience, but also the endemic audience, and make sure that we're maybe having some hard conversations about certain things to speak about what has worked and what hasn't worked in the past, and maybe help to change the direction of certain things to make it more effective, things like that, and also to come up with cool shit ideas to make people have a lot of fun. That's the big one.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Simon. And Markel, can you maybe speak to your part with your partnership too as well? I think it's really cool how you guys have such a similarity yet are totally opposite from each other in so many things. And so can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your role and how it's different from Simon's?
Yeah, no problem. Definitely, I come more so from the grassroots side of things. So you'll see me, I've worked with the fighting game community pretty heavily at the beginning of my career. And with that, it was honestly a great experience, being able to work with some of the most diverse esports gaming community in the world, and had the opportunity to work with them, building that up. I come more from the creative background, while Simon comes from the marketing side. I definitely work hand in hand. So again, when we began working with each other, it clicked very easily. And we was able to do a lot of great things, especially with the stuff that we done with the Houston Outlaws and Out the Gaming. But the stuff that I did before, again, was like working with local groups and events, doing things more so in Dallas at first, to where I was able to help out the community, build the community within the fighting game area, and help those guys out, like getting viewership and opportunities to be seen nationally, worldwide. For again, a lot of great talent here in Texas. So definitely wanted to help out Dallas, Houston, Austin, and the rest of San Antonio, kind of help out this area grow and get bigger. So they had me work in opportunities with Absolute Battle, Texas Showdown, Kumite in Tennessee, as well as like CEO and Evos and other major events within the fighting game community to kind of help them out with production or graphics, advertisement, promotion on social. And then from there, it transitioned to working with other influencers, other major teams, other publishers and developers. It's where me and Simon met up and started working with the Houston Outlaws, Optic Gaming, and like 10 other businesses at once. And then we noticed that there was a void within the gaming esports community where it's like there's not really too many, or if any, agency within that space at the time doing stuff for the gaming esports community as a full agency and not outside of it, coming from it and being endemic to understanding this community, this fan base, and how this is different than traditional agencies do the way that they market when they do something that's like traditional, right? Or how it's a lot different from the sports industry and the gaming industry. They're not one and the same. They work differently, and you have to be able to speak to them in a different way.
Yeah, it's its own animal. And I feel like, with one of the things that I know that I'm trying to accomplish, even with my show, is creating that bridge between people who are already in the industry to the people who are just newly to it, or trying to learn about it, or trying to understand why somebody in their life is so into it, and what does this look like, and what does it mean? Because people have a preconceived idea of just the industry itself, only based off of little snippets of things that they might see on a TV show or TV, and get this preconceived idea that is simply just not even true. And so I'm really excited to have you guys and have the connection with you fellas, because even for me, I'm still trying to get educated myself with this too as well. I am definitely not an expert, but I am an expert in humans, and I love I love people, and I love people who are passionate about something. And what I really love about both of you too, as well as, Simon too, you have a very compelling story of how, where you once were, like back in the day. We're talking like depression, lots of it, like a lot of social anxieties, I'm sure, and issues that you had going on, and how it kind of saved you. And can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, as you said, I didn't initially ever intend to get into gaming. I kind of like many younger people didn't really see it as an option, right? Like I didn't know it was even a thing I mean, admittedly, when I got into gaming, it wasn't as much of an option as it is now. I'm old, but I initially trained as a teacher, a science teacher, so not exactly gaming adjacent or anything like that. I didn't do marketing or anything like that initially. I dropped out of the teaching system in the UK, where I come from, because pay was shit. Like, let's face it, it still is as far as I'm aware for teachers. It's
It is.
talked about last time, like probably one of the most undervalued jobs, maybe a little more valued now that parents have had to actually do it themselves. But I think that you get very disillusioned with the world when you think you have a career path that you had in mind. I've always wanted to teach kids. I like people. I like learning. I like helping people learn. I like seeing people achieve something, and I like seeing people like do better for themselves and be great at things. And obviously, naturally, you think, oh, teaching. Your mind doesn't go to leadership; it goes teaching or something that involves kids. Because when you're younger, you don't really understand the scope of what options there are available to you in the world. So I kind of dropped out of that and felt pretty like disillusioned. I went back and lived with my dad, and for about 6 to 8 months, literally, as you said, like I was on antidepressants. My only connection really with the world was through a World of Warcraft guild that I ran. I had about 90 to 100 people every day on a channel that we ran an World of Warcraft guild. And I remember, like we spoke about last time, I remember sort of lamenting about how I didn't know what to do with my life, how I was depressed. And a bunch of the people who led the guild with me were like, hey, why don't you send your CV into Blizzard right now, because they're hiring. maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe they'll look at your CV, and I was like, I don't know, like hundreds and like thousands of people will send their CVs in. Like, why are they going to care about me? Like, I don't have anything to do with computer games in my back. I mean, obviously I played them a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I used the last of my, what was it, like unemployment money to fly myself to Ireland for an interview. I didn't know at the time, obviously, that if they've asked you over to Ireland for the interview, you probably already got the job anyway.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that sounds pretty promising.
Yeah, I mean, if they're making you fly there, yeah, and yeah, so I landed in Ireland. I went over to the office. As a younger person, you're terrified of going to this massive office. There's thousands of people there. I walk in and there's these 4 people standing there I've never seen before, ever. And then they reeled off their in-game names, and it was all my guild leaders from the guild in World of Warcraft, because at Blizzard, you're not allowed to tell people that you work for Blizzard because there's potential conflict of interest. People can like bribe you to give them stuff. And at the time,
Did you get fired for that? Like, you could get fired from your job, right? Like, you really can.
They're very strict.
Yeah, if you abused it, you got fired. I mean, if someone found out, they found out. I mean, that wasn't that big a deal. But Blizzard's a very strict system.
Yeah.
They still do even to this day. But yeah, like in the concept of, and like I said, like when I left Blizzard, so I left over 10 years ago now.
Yes.
But when I left from the office. I emailed all of the executives, so Mike and Chris Metzen and that, and basically just said, like, you saved my life, kind of. Like, I don't know what would have happened if I'd have stayed in the depression route. And like, obviously, I didn't know at the time that all of my leadership skills came from running a World of Warcraft guild.
Yeah.
Like, really, almost all of it. Like, before that, I wasn't confident. I wasn't able to manage people. I didn't really understand the politics of managing people. I still hate it to this day, but
I don't know anybody who does like it, to be honest.
Yeah. But when you manage 90 to 100 people every day, the dramas that goes on between those people, and you're not paying them money, so there's no expectation. They can leave whenever they want.
Yeah.
You kind of realize that, well, you don't realize it, but you're actually learning a lot of skills, like special skills for that. And also it's that whole thing about, like, people see, we were saying before, if someone had looked at me from the outside, they would have seen like a sad young person on their computer at home, which generates that thought process of like gamers are loners, they're emo, that sort of side of things. But they don't realize that in my head, like on my headphones, there's 90 people talking, like, which makes me more sociable than almost anybody else in their work. And I think that's something that's so beautiful about gaming, is it brings, I'm European, so, well,
yeah,
I'm not European anymore, but I was European when England was still in Europe. But, there was like, one of my guild leaders was Slovakian, one was Swedish, one was Finnish, like one was German. So you get to understand all of those cultures, and you get a really good like outlook on the world as in general. Like, we had a Slovenian guy who was, they were going through some national issues at the time, and there was like bomb warnings and stuff, and we'd literally be preparing for a raid or something like that, and he'd be like, I gotta go for 4 hours where we've got those sirens going off. And like, just as an English person, you live this sheltered life, like nothing like that happened since the world wars, that's part ancient history. So get like a better understanding of like the troubles that other people go through helps you to like position your mindset in life in general anyway, and be like, well, like if they can be positive and keep going with that shitty situation, like, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah, what am I complaining about? All of a sudden your problems are like,
it's also just a huge misconception that gamers don't really help one another out, when you see it all the time. Like, even in the fighting game community, like, I've seen the community take care of other people within the community. Like, someone had to go to the hospital, they did a GoFundMe to raise money to help that person out, or somebody's stuff went up missing or broke, and they know, like, hey, we're all scrapping to do stuff together. Like, we're going to help you get the equipment because what you've done for the community is great. We respect it. We're going to help you out because we want to see you do good, because you want to see us do good, and we're all here together. Like, there's so many opportunities and instances where people have helped one another within these gaming groups and gaming communities that people don't really think about. And they just think about, oh yeah, you're just wasting your time playing those video games. And it's like, no, there's opportunity here. And that's not even talking about the other chances you have about creating a business and career within the space.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking about creating a business within the space, can I just say your story is very romantic. Simon and Markel love story.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Just the podcast. They got Justin Bieber hearts up, is what they're doing right now. Like, because it is adorable, and it's like, oh my god, it's so sweet. Obviously, I'm a chick, so I'm just like, oh, that's so cute. When guys are like, that's cool, man. So Markel,
we're good enough friends that we just laugh about it.
Yeah, if it ain't hurt nobody's feelings.
Markel's fiance always jokes that I'm like his second wife. So.
Yeah, you guys actually say that. So see, it's not me. That's the thing. Work husbands. Gosh. Anyway, Markel, tell us that little story. I mean, you don't have to go too detailed, but like, tell us enough.
Oh my God.
It's like
You're making it sound worse.
I feel like you do need to go into detail now, just to clear things up.
I know, exactly. It's again, I started working with Infinite at a point in time when they were trying to build up and pick up teams in order to jump into the new leagues that were coming out. Yeah. At the same time, Simon was in the UK, and he was also talking to the CEO of Infinite at the time, kind of helping him set up ways to run the business and, again, like find someone to do marketing. And at that time, I started working there to kind of like, build the pitch decks and stuff. Simon was basically talking with him and couldn't really find someone for the position. The guy was like, why don't you just take it? And he was like, well, sure, I'll do it then, right?
Free trip to America? Hell yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So he flew Simon in, and basically I was like, yeah, cool. I'm going to be working with him. I'm picking him up for the airport. We'll talk and chill. And so got Simon, and from there, like, again, we worked together in the same office. Literally got him a place in Dallas. I was like, hey, the apartments I have are pretty nice. It's close to the job. You might as well come over here. You ain't got a car anyway. You might as well ride with. He's like, cool, we go. And they're like, yeah, we only have one apartment available, and it's right next door to me. So it was like, well, all right, whatever.
That's what he says. I mean, are we sure?
Yeah, I just knew it.
The funny thing is, when we were starting AoE and we were talking to the accountant who was setting up our bank account, he was like, what's your address? And I was like, 12301. And he's like, well, what's your address? And I'm like, 12303. He's like, that's really weird. We're like,
just don't know. It is what it is. Like, hey,
you're setting family, joint bank accounts and everything. I mean, it's a very lovely story.
Look, we got great family. Like, I was able to have Simon come through.
Markel's mom adopted me, and that was
my mom pretty much.
When they walked in, when we were helping her move, Markel's got a younger brother as well, and so it's me, Markel, his younger brother, helping them move into their new place. This is like a black family moving into a very white suburban neighborhood. We go into this place. Markel's mom introduced me as their adopted son. The look on their faces was so funny, because I'm like, yeah. Like,
well, you guys pretty much look like twins.
Yeah, of course.
But I was saying, like, honestly,
Donte's like your love child.
Oh, no.
If you guys used.
Yeah, so we were saying that the sad thing is if the roles had been reversed, they probably would have just accepting it. Like, if it was some white kids with one black kid, it would have been like, oh yeah. So it's the one white kid with the black family who are rich. It's like,
I love that, you guys. That's so cool. Now, I know Donte had a few questions for you guys too as well, so I'll stop hoarding my questions.
Yeah. You guys were talking about how the esports and competitive gaming is an industry. So I want to know, what is your advice to like young gamers interested in joining that industry?
For me, I mean, I normally have this question a lot of times, and it's getting better now, mainly because teams need, they're starting to understand how to make a business and an organization live longer than just the moment. And they're starting to think about, long term, what can we do? What do we need? When like Simon and I started, it was basically about the grind and the hustle. Like, how much do you really want to work to get into this industry? Because there was no infrastructure fully, right? There was a whole bunch of people just doing stuff to see what worked. Now it's to the point where it's a whole bunch of people throwing money to see how far it works, right? And so the idea for me is networking is crucial. It's one of your biggest tools that you need to use at all times. LinkedIn, social media, going to events, talking to the right people, try to figure out exactly what is it you're trying to do, find out who's doing it in the favorite companies that you appreciate, and then start trying your best to get into a conversation with someone, at least in a sense to, maybe intern or get an opportunity to work in an event and try to soak up as much information and knowledge as possible. For me, I just dove into it, right? I really wanted to get in the gaming community and in the competitive scene mainly. I wanted to do it within the FPS realm, so the shooters, so Call of Duty and Halo. And I really didn't know how to get into that, but I did have a friend that was very close into the fighting game community, and that's how I got my step in. Even though I suck at fighters, like I'm complete trash, but I love what the community does, and I love watching, and I love being a part of it. And I had the opportunity of saying, like, I am a designer. I love design. I'm not a competitive gamer, but I could take my skills and help other competitive gamers and organizations out. So I found my niche within that space to say, hey, all right, I want to come in. I know you're a local team, a local group. Y'all don't really have money, but I'm going to show you how to market properly. And because of that, they got me to the opportunity of working with Pendex Gaming, who was doing production. And then we made events look a lot more expensive than they actually were, right?
Yeah.
And then that transition to being able to work with the larger groups, which got me, again, networking with bigger people, with deeper pockets, with more opportunities. And then they got me working with teams and influencers to the point of where I am now, where I have a larger network and I can talk to some of those people, developers and publishers, or at least get a way of contact to them from the people that I've associated myself with throughout my career.
Yeah, that's awesome. That was a great question too, Donte. And which kind of leads me to my next question as well is, I want people to understand what the difference between esports, competitive gaming, and being a gaming influencer. Like, so people who are wanting to get in the industry, it's not just like this one thing you're getting into and then, oh, I'm in esports. You might not even be in esports, or you might not be a gamer who's going to be competitive, but you're a great streamer and you have great commentaries and you're fun and all those things. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we've found, especially when you start talking to brands and people who maybe are a little detached from the industry, is that understanding of what esports actually is. Esports, the term, is like a blessing and a curse for the industry. It's a blessing because it helps a lot of brands understand what it is. It's like electronic sports, right? Like, so I get it, it's like sports, but ironically, it's not like sports at all. It's way more like the pop industry than it is the sports industry. But it helps us because the investors are investing in the sports part of esports, right? They know future is technology and sports is a thing I understand. Therefore, if I put those two things together, I can invest money because I can grasp the concept. And then, like I said before, so I worked at wargaming.net. We worked for a game called, we did esports for a game called World of Tanks. And literally when I started my job there, it was just me. And they told me, like, your job description is do esports. That was it. They didn't know what it was I was doing. They didn't know anything about it. They just know that I talked about it a lot when I was at Blizzard, and they were a bunch of managers from Blizzard. And they were like, okay, this guy knows about esports. We're just going to get him to do it. And they're like, so they just put you in and they're like, just do it, please. Just do the thing. And in doing that, like, World of Tanks is not an esport. It's a really, really fun competitive game. And I think that was
different. Like, can you elaborate on that? Not to cut you off. So, like, can you give us an example of like their
like a
sport game?
Yeah, so esports, we always say, like, esports isn't something, you don't make an esports game. The community awards esports title to the game. So it's like a success state for a competitive game. It's esports is when you hit the pinnacle of that game's success state. So a good example, I actually had this massive argument with someone at Twitch once about Hearthstone. like, is Hearthstone an esport? And he was like, oh, no, Hearthstone's not an esport, because he was a really like hardcore esports fan. And I'm like, well, is it fun to play? Yes. Is it a good game? Yes. Does it have a big community? Yes. Do people like watching it? Yes. Is it an esport? Yes. Like, do you like that it's called an esport? No. Sure, no problem. But I think that's one of the things you have to be aware of is some games, and a good example would be Fortnite. Fortnite's borderline, right? Like, it is fun to watch, but not competitively. It's fun to watch content creators play it, which is why their marketing strategy is more on the concept of doing pro-am events, because we can bring, if you don't do pro-am, all the content creators will not qualify because they're not good enough. Like, they're going to lose to a bunch of 16-year-old kids who are going to stomp them every time. And people don't want to watch that. They don't want to watch people they don't know, because battle royale games are very hard to watch. They're very hard to broadcast because there's 60 people. It's really hard to follow 60 people at once. It's really hard to actually do good production around that. It's really hard to tell storylines when there's 60 people in it, some of which you've never heard of before. But if you do a pro-am, they've all got this background. They can all stream on their own channels. So Fortnite it hits most of the points that an esport would, but it's not really a good competitive title. Like, it doesn't have like a strong, stable, competitive rule set. And Epic Games are the first people to admit that it's not an esport. Like, they don't give a crap that it's, like, they don't care.
They just want people to play.
They just want people to play their game, and it's fun. Like, they don't mind that it's not an esport. It's no big deal. It's why they introduced, as we spoke about last time, a game-breaking sword before a $3 million tournament qualifier. You know, and I think that because they just said, like, we don't care. Like, like, our esports audience is 1% of our like 100 million users we have. Like, why would we balance for that?
You can make 30 mil plus in a month, so we're not worried about the esports side of thing. And that's,
they just want to make an entertaining experience. And then that also brings me on to your other point, which is like, what's the difference between an esports professional and a content creator? Sometimes an esports professional can be a content creator, but it's less likely because you need to put in the time to be an esports professional. And again, we had a client who shall not be named at one point that we were talking to.
Text it to me real quick. Just tell me who it was.
Yeah, sure. Who they were like, well, we want to do an esports event where we have a bunch of really, really good esports athletes or professionals coming in. And they were like, we're like, cool. And they were like, yeah, we really want Ninja. And we're like, well, I hate to tell you, but he's not esports, right? Like, he's a content. He used to be esports. He used to be a competitive player, but he is not that anymore. He's an entertainer. That's a very different thing. He's an entertainer who plays competitive video games. But if you put him in and as the Fortnite World Cup showed, you put him in any actual competitive tournament, he's not going to qualify because he doesn't put that kind of time into the game. His time in the game is about entertaining the viewer, which is very different to, like, it's like a person who does soccer tricks is not going to beat Messi on the pitch, but might do cooler tricks. And it's like, but Messi's still the professional player, like the person who practices every day of his life and who works really hard for it. But neither of them is wrong. And as we said before, like, often when we're advising brands, we'll ask them, like, what do you actually want to get out of this? Like, if you want to sell product, if you want to just shift product, go with an esports content, or go with a content creator, not an esports content creator, ideally, just any content creator that has a good, engaged audience. If you want to build brand visibility and you want to build brand like loyalty, go with an esports team, because those teams have been here 15 years. They've been slogging away. They've got a really diehard community. If you just want to sell product, go with an influencer, because those guys can shift product like nobody else, And I think that getting that understanding is super important. And also, Donte, to your question, understanding like what options you have in the industry around young people is super important too. Like, you can be an esport, you can be an accountant in esports. That's totally fine. Like, if you have an accounting degree, don't think you can't do esports, because
you can be a chef in esports.
They need you more actually than other people. So I think that's another thing, is like understanding that esports as an industry is like sports as an industry, but the only difference is how fame works. Like fame works way more like pop culture than it does sports.
Yeah,
That was a
totally.
long-winded answer. Sorry.
No, but well, there's actually a lot of answers for a lot of things. But yeah, don't go ahead, Donte. I know he has.
Yeah, I want to ask Markel. We were talking about. So you mentioned you're really well versed in fighting games. So is fighting games? Are there any esport fighting games?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if
What are
you look at it, you think of Street Fighter has been on ESPN. I think Smash Bros has been on Disney. You still have Mortal Kombat, Tekken, you Dragon Ball Fighter Z. I mean, you have a lot. Guilty Gear. It kind of depends. Like there's so many different genres and so many different types of fighting games. They all work together, but also are very different than one another. So you can't really lump them in together a lot of times because again, those communities work in different ways. They feel different things. They believe in different ways that they want to approach certain situations. But
which genre of esports do you think the Black community or even minorities in general like tend to like focus on?
Oh yeah, we definitely have this conversation a lot. It easily goes to the fighting game community and the sports games.
Why do you think that is?
And the reason why we believe that is mainly because of the fact of consoles versus PCs, which also is a big conversation right now too, because it's also like the PC community and esports events have more money than the console events. And that is something that needs to change in a lot of different ways.
And the one thing that Markel pointed out before, and I think is really poignant, is especially in lower income communities, which in the US does tend to be like Black or mixed community, they will buy like one console for 2 kids. You know, like the 2 kids play, and sports games and fighting games are those games that the 2 people can play.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to get to. I mean, even in my household, like even with my parents, right? They got me what the 64 or the Sega or the Xbox or the PlayStation, right? And they get 2 controllers, and then they get games that we could play multiplayer against, right?
Right.
When in that case, when you think about it, the ones that are easy to do so are sports games, fighting games, and sometimes shooters at the time when they had split screen. And that's because it was the cheaper option at the time, and it made a lot more sense for it to be an entertainment system for the whole family, right? Because even when you're not using the Xbox or PlayStation, you had the opportunity of using it to watch DVDs and stuff with the family. And that's because, again, lower income communities, it's really focused on the family and, of course, the funds and also the not understanding. When you have to get a PC is usually single-player experience, unless you get multiple different PCs in order to work with one another, in order to, again, even have the strong enough internet to make things work and run for everybody in the house to be comfortable. And so we have that conversation, and that's why you see the fighting game community be so diverse. You see the sports community be so diverse, and it's mainly because of that situation. But there is, again, another way, like there should be some ways to put some money into that space, but the PC community definitely has that locked up when it comes to esports gaming and like the professional sense of things.
Yeah.
And you see a lot less development of industries like the fighting games industry when it comes to like incoming money as well, because a lot of brands are really afraid of activating a diverse community.
Right.
Brands who get into like League of Legends know, okay, it's predominantly white and Asian males. Like we get that, that's easy. Like it's an easier sign the check. Whereas if you say, okay, well, it's Capcom Pro Tour. Okay, so viewer base wise, it's 50% Black Americans. There's like 20% Mex. This is just guessing numbers. I don't actually know the numbers for this, but it's a large percentage of minority groups. Brands just are scared of that. Like they're like, well, what if we upset them? What if we say the wrong things? And one of the things that we as an agency try and do is help bridge that and say like, okay, well, we understand this community, we're a part of it, but we understand what you're also as a brand looking for. Like we know what your KPIs are. We're not unprofessional about that. And we can translate what you need into what they want without ruffling feathers, and because a lot of it, most of those fears are completely unfair. Like it's fear based out of non-understanding, because they react to things no differently to the other communities in many cases.
Exactly.
Like there's some stuff you just don't say, but like you'd have to be really dumb to say those things. And ironically, people do still say those things. But I think that like it's this fear factor that big brands are still like they'll sign a check for the LCS any day for like $3 million, no problem. I want like on stage. I get it. It's on stage branding. I get to be on the jersey. I'm in the lower third on the screen. I'm realistically, really bad value for money. That same $3 million, you could own the fighting games industry. You could sponsor main stage production on every major fighting game in all of the US for the entire year. The opportunity is way higher, but the fear is so high that it just blocks people. Like they
and I was going to say, to kind of jump on that too. I mean, it's the perception, right? Also, again, the PC community as being more affluent, right? Being able to spend more money because they already spent the money on the PC rig, so they probably have a larger. Well, in to be honest, they probably do have a larger household income, and so they're like, oh well, that seems safer than trying to test it in a community that's so diverse and also very strong within the lower income communities. Maybe we don't really want to touch that, but there's also a type of brand loyalty that you can get from different groups if you understand how to market to them properly. And that's something that, again, Simon and I are very big on trying to do within this industry. Like the whole point of AoE Creative is to help build the game and esports nerd culture out correctly and have non-endemics come within the space properly. Because we have seen multiple times where large companies come in, throw some money, expecting it to just work because, we just throw money anyway, and that's how it works in sports or elsewhere. And then the community completely trashed them and end that career really quickly before it even started. And we don't want that to happen because that hurts the industry. That hurts non-endemics coming within the space because they see other non-endemics fail horribly. And it doesn't help build these other gamers or influencers or esports teams and organizations to the point where they can make more money to have more of an infrastructure in order to have something more solid in the future.
Yeah, and when you're talking about making more money too, it's like, I think, what are these players making? What are these influencers making? Like, I mean, I know we kind of talked about some numbers before, but like, if you want to just kind of throw it out there, because I think a lot of people don't really know how much these guys are making.
Yeah, I mean, talk about the tier
and the prize pools and all that.
Like, a ninja, but like, what about even the average esports tournament?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is it varies wildly across the industry. The high end for esports, like there's certain League of Legends players that are earning $3 to $5 million a year on contracts. Most of them are playing in China. Those are where the really big money, but there is a couple of $1 million contracts in the US. Call of Duty and CSGO players on average earning $25,000 to $35,000 a month. So and Call of Duty is a console title, so it's definitely.
How old are these people? What are the age ranges for this kind of thing?
For League, a lot younger, generally speaking. They're in their early 20s normally. For the real top pros, the longer standing games like COD and CSGO, they tend to get a bit older. So they start in their early 20s, but the career lasts longer. So it normally lasts till their late 20s, which is pretty on par with sports in a way. So, but like content creators, that's a whole different world. Like content creators make wildly larger amounts of money and can start as young as like 15, and they can be making easily millions of dollars a year at 15. Like
some people even $1 million a month, depending on the content.
So I think that was the last numbers we knew were confirmed on Ninja, and that wasn't this year. That was before. I think he was making over $1 million a month. He's definitely one of the highest earning content creators, but even like good content creators will earn a pretty healthy amount of money. There's a big push right now for agencies to pick up content creators all the way down to, I would say, well, on Twitch, it would be like 500 to 1,000 concurrent viewers on Twitch, which is the measurable on Twitch is concurrent viewers mostly. Even those guys will have agents now, which again, this is why I say it's like the pop industry. In a lot of cases, they're incredibly exploited. They do not understand their worth. The agency is taking like 80% of what they're really owed, but they sign ridiculous contracts. I mean, there's been,
because they don't know any better.
There's been some very high profile cases of contracts like that with big esports teams and agencies where they've realized how much of the money that they're losing to the agency. There's a really good person, if you ever get someone on, a guy called Devin Nash is a great guy. He has a great YouTube channel as well that you can, he goes through the industry really, really well. He did a whole thing on like the agency world and like how to, what's a good agency model versus a bad agency model. And it's super useful for these young people because they have no idea. You know, yesterday they were nobody, and today they're like
every kid be a gamer. Yeah,
exactly. And
well, it's the biggest thing right now is like everybody stopped saying that they wanted to be like, you know, an astronaut, and now they're saying they want to be a YouTube streamer, Twitch streamer.
It's like, I think it's like 2 in 3 young men want to be like a gaming content creator now.
That makes sense.
As a thing, and it's the same as the movie industry, right? Like 0.1% become megastars. There's a whole bunch of people who are streaming. I mean, Twitch is the best and worst example. Like there'll be people on Twitch that have been streaming to like 10 viewers for 5 years.
Wow.
They got the hunger for it, and it's great that they're doing it. But like the expectation of like, oh, I've been doing it for a year now, I should be getting at like 500 to 1,000 users. It's like, yeah, you're basing your expectations on like 1% of the people who make it.
And a lot of those people who made it have been doing it way before it was called Twitch, right? It was like Just TV or something, and they had the chance of building up when Twitch started, that fan base and their viewership. It's possible to become like a star overnight, but it's so rare. And a lot of people don't understand that and don't really get that idea. Like, oh yeah, well, you know, I could do it because they're doing it. It's like it's not.
He just plays video games. It's like
it's just like sports. You know, you see all
exactly
spend their whole lives trying to become an athlete, and then they realize, wow, it's almost near impossible.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you guys, just to change topics completely. Like, what do you guys see VR headed? Like, where do you see that playing into the esports realm?
Esports, I don't see that for a while.
Yeah.
VR for like entertainment though is really, really getting up there. Like I think nowadays there's a couple of interesting esports. There's a couple interesting concepts. I'm more interested in mobile as esports than VR as esports. I think VR stands the same problem that a lot of things with VR do. Is it's fun to play it, but it's hard to watch it. Like a lot of the time, the person in the VR, like if you watch someone playing inside Beat Saber, it looks cool. But if you watch them outside, they look like they're flailing around crazily. You know, like I think there's some.
That's just me on a Friday.
Markel's fiance could be a pro Beat Saber player.
Destroys Beat Saber.
Oh really? You said mobile gaming. You said you think mobile gaming has more potential.
Yeah, mobile gaming.
Well, it's also to kind of jump on that real quick. The mobile gaming industry, everybody has a phone, right? VR is a problem because everybody doesn't have the equipment to run the VR. Like the best VR headsets, you need to use a PC, right? And then that means you already need to drop $1,000 to $3,000 on a PC, and then on top of that, spend another $600 for the headset. And then of course buy the game or whatever you're trying to have. So it makes it very hard and limited for most people to have and access and be able to use. Whereas mobile gaming, like anybody download it, anytime, any place, you can play it as long as you have some type of connection to the internet. is widely available, and that's the reason why mobile games actually do extremely well, especially right now.
Do you guys play mobile games?
I play a little bit of the PUBG Mobile for reasons, and that's about it, actually.
I play Runeterra, so I'm not really playing any like shooter as much. I have tried a few shooters on my phone, but I try to avoid having games on my phone. That way little cousins don't come and ask you for games on your phone, you know?
What's interesting, though, is some of my cousins play like Fortnite with the controller connected to the phone, which is pretty crazy. Because I feel like the controls of pressing on the screen it's near impossible to really be accurate with that.
Yeah, and it's actually arguable, like Call of Duty Mobile and PUBG Mobile are arguably more successful from user base than the PUBG PC game and the Call of Duty PC game.
Really? That is crazy.
Because people can play them in so many other places. You know, like people who are working and then get taking a lunch break, they can play a game of COD on their mobile. Like you can't do that anywhere else. And the game's really good. Like it's not like a shitty mobile port of the game. It's a different game designed for mobile, and it's fun. And I think mobile games, they allow themselves to take a little less seriously. So, and the fan base is a little more forgiving of things that are like slightly off-brand. So they can do more funny things and fun things and keep it entertaining more. And so, because again, mobile gaming at the moment, they're not really aiming at esports as such. There is a couple of mobile games that are aiming at esports and making the transition, but most of them are just building this massive player base, because the way esports works is your viewer base is based on your player base. Like your player base is the first, is the top of the funnel, and your viewer base is the next stage of the funnel. So if you don't have a really big player base, you're not going to have a really big viewer base. So from that perspective, mobile is building, the top of its funnel is massive. The only real difference is that the hardcore esports fans are still struggling to accept mobile as like a true esports, but that's changing really rapidly.
Especially now during these interesting times in the world. There's a lot of changes that are changing rapidly that I think that some things that you think were going to take a little bit longer to get to is happening quicker. And then the things that you thought were going to happen quicker are now being delayed.
Yeah,
I mean, gaming went from being the bane of parents' lives to the savior of parents' lives overnight.
Absolutely. And you made a good point about the whole teachers thing too as well. Let me just tell you how much I appreciate teachers more nowadays days. Thank you very much. Yeah. But hey, in closing, guys, can you just kind of tell us like the message that AoE Creative kind of stands for, that you can kind of leave with us, or any kind of advice or words of wisdom, if you will, just about what you guys stand for, and any kind of message you want to give out there to the older people like myself, the moms out there, or the people who are just getting into gaming, whatever you want.
I mean, that's a very broad topic, because there's a lot of things that can be said definitely about the game and esports community. But here at AoE, 100%, our whole goal is to help, like I brought up before, bring non-endemics into the space properly, as well as help these endemic brands learn how to grow a brand within this space to be for, the long haul and not just for the now. The thing that, again, started us into becoming AoE Creative was we noticed a lot of different teams, a lot of different businesses within this space. I created a cool logo, created a cool look, and it was like, that's it. I'm just posting it out there. And now they're in the process of going, what does my brand mean? Why do we choose that as a symbol? Why is it our logo? Why is it our name? Like, what is our message, and how do we get people to actually follow us for something a lot more deep and rooted into our business, instead of just the players or they had a cool logo? And so that's where we come in to kind of help build that story, build that narrative. And at the end of the day, we want to do cool shit. So,
that's right. and where can they find you guys? Where can they find you guys? What's your handles and all that?
So, of course, AoEcreative.com. You can catch our company there. You can see me on Twitter at Markel_Lee. And Simon?
LinkedIn, Simon Bennett. That's the only.
Markel Lee and LinkedIn.
That's my social media specialty. Yeah.
And before we let you guys go, for selfish reasons, I just have to ask, You guys are video game experts. I'm torn. I'm curious to see what you guys think. Xbox or PlayStation? What are you going with? The new one.
PC.
Simon is neither. He's gonna say PC. Unfortunately, I played a lot of Xbox and PlayStation. I was the guy who had both.
Yeah.
But I was more leaning towards Xbox because my friends. But because of the new era coming up now, I have to say PlayStation. And the only reason why is because I have a PC, and every exclusive that goes to Xbox is going to PC. And PlayStation has its exclusives sold up because PlayStation has really strong exclusives that I miss out on sometimes. So that is the only reason.
I say
not specs, not anything else. It's exclusive.
Switch.
Got it. And Simon's going.
NES, Nintendo NES.
No, I'm one of those people. Like I originally started as a console player for sure. Like, I mean, back in my day, that was really the only option. Gaming PCs didn't really exist. But realistically speaking, I find the console industry pretty grotesque in some ways. And I feel like the PC industry is a little more open source. You know, you can build a PC of multiple parts. There's multiple companies that make multiple things. You can make decisions. Nobody is controlling.
Not such a monopoly on it.
Yeah. I struggle with the console market in that sense. And honestly speaking, I don't play console games except for fighting games, and all the ones I like playing are all on PC. So PC Master
Don't listen to him. Okay.
So what you're trying to say is
Get a PC. That's what he's trying to say.
All right. Well, thanks so much, you guys. I appreciate you guys taking the time. Donte, always lovely having you. And I mean, not like we're going anywhere. We're friends anyway. And we're going to be filming more shows. And you guys are stuck with me too, so congratulations. I will be bothering you even more than I ever have before. So thank you to that in advance. And thank you to all of our viewers or our listeners. We appreciate all of you. And until next time, aloha.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Esports Futuri E-Zine Podcast. This podcast is part of the Esports Futuri Podcast Network and produced by Innovation Media Enterprises. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast channel and leave us a review.